Hello, second generation VR headsets for next year, 2017. Putting out a video there for you to list your comments, what I would like to see coming out next year. My name's RJ and this is the Tech Cave. So I've made a list of things that whilst using the headset over the last month, and I've had it a month now and still enjoying this, all the things that I would like to see coming out on the next generation headset, what I would part money for to change my headset for another headset, what extra things. So starting off at the top of the list, I'm sure that most of you are probably going to request, myself would also like to see a bump in resolution. I don't think any of us are expecting a huge massive leap in resolution, but just to go up a small amount would really help with text on certain games and just kind of clearing up those edges. Whether they can develop something that would give you higher density resolution at the center of the screen and less density at the edges would be probably something that would really help, I think. Don't think that is going to happen, but so extra bump in resolution, how much extra do you think that you would like to see to for you to kind of go for another headset? Currently, what is the resolution? Something like 2100 by 1200, so I don't know, 2.5 by 14, so 1440p, something in that kind of realm. Do you think that we might get to 4K? 4K might be there, I don't know. With current generation cards that are coming out, the Pascal cards that are coming out, they might be able to get somewhere close to 4K. This holy grail of the 90 frames per second is what we're looking at. Now that's going to come down to development of the games as well, not just resolution. Whether they can bring out a display that has a higher resolution and you can scale it down depending on what graphics card you have. I think the fear possibly of putting too high a resolution into a display may have scared the developers, that people would have sacrificed their frames and everybody would have been barfing all over the place. That may be why the resolution has kind of been kept down a little bit. I don't know, that's whether I'm being skeptical, I don't know. What are your comments on that? But maybe that's the reason why the resolution is not quite as high as we would like. Maybe it's just down to a cost thing. There's a price point. People gasped a little bit when the prices came out on these things. I didn't think they were that high at all for what we were getting. Head-mounted displays before these have been inherently way more expensive. Going back 5-6 years, looking at £1,500 for sort of $2,500 for headsets that had sort of 640 before 80 or something, with 45, 50, 55 degrees of view. I mean, just truly crap. They really were paying a lot of money for those things. So this is pretty good. So resolution bump, what are your thoughts? How much more resolution, if nothing else changed and they just come out with HTC Vive 2 2017 edition, or the Plus edition maybe later in the year? Like, this is the Enthusiast edition, and they were going to up the resolution on it for those who have the new 1080 cards or 1080 SLIs or something like that. What would you part your money with to go bump up in resolution? It would be great because, as I said, as you've possibly seen yourselves, if you've used one of these, text is just dire. You can't look at your desktop display in VR and be anywhere kind of usable. I would certainly not sit there and start typing up a document or start using CAD in the old-fashioned way with icons and such, with one of these displays as they are at the moment. So resolution would be nice, and I'm sure that's the number one on everyone's list. That's what everyone's going to start going on about. Or, I don't know, maybe a bit later on we'll talk about something else that may be on number one's list. Field of view. This kind of mixes in with the resolution. Field of view, for me personally, I think it's fine. It's great. 110 degrees on this, and I was a little bit surprised when I first put it on. I thought it was going to be a bit wider, and put it on and went, oh, it kind of looks like I'm looking down binoculars a little bit, but soon kind of forgot that and felt that because of the optics and the way they work, you're not darting your eyes from left and right. If you use one of these, you know what I'm talking about, because you have that sweet spot in the middle. You don't use your eyes you move your head a lot more in VR. The head gets moved a lot. When you see people wearing VR, you're going, wow, they're moving their head a lot, when in reality you just kind of move your eyes. You're a bit more sort of shifty in real life, you know, because you're sort of checking out stuff over there that's going on rather than moving your head. For guys anyway. So you tend to move your head a lot more. So the field of view doesn't really come in. The field of view would be great if it was 108 degrees or something like that, so you're totally immersed. That would be fantastic, but not at the expense of resolution, which when you're spreading out pixels over the field of view, that's what suffers. So for me, I'd rather see the resolution go up way before they decide to increase the field of view. So I don't think next year we're going to see an increase in field of view. I don't. I may be epically wrong on that, but personally I would think a resolution bump is going to happen next year, not a field of view. What are your thoughts on that? Would you like to see the field of view going up on your devices? They're pretty much all about the same, I think. They've kind of all trumped around about this 110 degrees. So, you know, it is what it is. The other thing that I noted on there, this is more just about the HTC Vive, is that the way that the optics work on this is there is a much smaller sweet spot. So that means that you have to get this bit perfectly aligned to get it in focus. I found just by slackening off the one side, manually moving it around with one hand and then cranking it right up, 9 times out of 10 I get it pretty spot on. It would be nice if that was slightly larger, and you could move your eyes a little bit more, so that would be good, and it would feel a bit more natural if you could move your eyes more to the sides of the screens a little bit. But then you're starting to come into the field of view, as I said. So you quickly get used to moving your head around. If any of you are using or have used a thing called Track IR, I had it on my flight sim setup a few years back, where you moved your head but your eyes still looked at the screen, and so you could kind of get this VR sort of experience through a monitor. And after a few minutes, it worked surprisingly well. It really did. Your brain's an amazing thing to kind of sort of adapt to these things. And a couple of my mates came around, they tried it, and they're like, wow, when I was explaining to them, they were going, that sounds crap, that doesn't sound like it's going to work at all. But when you actually use it, it does. So you quickly adapt to these things. Next, the big one, the elephant in the room, or the cable that's strapped across the room, is the other one. More so for the Vive, because we have the ability to get up and walk around. Now I know you can a little bit in on the Oculus, but nowhere near as much as you can on the Vive, and that really is spectacularly good for VR. If you've got an Oculus and you've not tried a Vive, try and go and find somewhere, or find a mate that's got one, or go to one of these demo rooms and try it, because I guarantee you will sell your Oculus in a heartbeat and put up with this damn tether that you trip over with, and is a royal pain in the ass, and you have to twizzle around loads of flipping times because you get it wrapped up. And yes, it is a monstrous pain in the ass, but the experience it gives you you would put up with it. I put up with it any day of the week. Given the choice of going with an Oculus and having to just be sat there, or just stand up and kneel down, or being able to walk across the room and then crawl through a tunnel space and try and look through. If anybody of you have ever played, what's the game called now? Oh no, my memory's going. Budget Cuts. You've got to play that. It is. I can't wait for that game to come out. I will download that on day one. It's fantastic. And you're on your hands and knees and you're looking through a little service vent and like to shoot robots and things. That just blew my mind, and that is where VR has got to go. It really has. So the cable. Sorry, getting off track there. And I did make some bullet points here to try and stop me from rambling on. But yes, the cable. I don't think it's going to go anytime soon because of power. We can put batteries on and such like, and bandwidth. If you've seen in the news, if you probably are looking around on YouTube sites and websites about VR stuff, and you've probably seen that there are companies out there developing computers to strap to your back. Who the hell is going to pay thousands of pounds, dollars, whatever, to strap a computer to your back that's pretty much only going to be used for VR, because you're not going to use that computer for your desktop, I would imagine. Unplugging and plugging it back in, that's not going to happen. And who's going to spend thousands of pounds on that? So we're stuck with this cable and trying to get the information back. My thought on this, on something that may get developed, is say keeping a smaller cable that just goes to a small, not backpack maybe, but hopefully like a little just a waist belt or something, with a battery pack on there and some wireless receivers, multiple wireless receivers to keep the bandwidth up. I don't know, but that's where I think it may go. Possibly not next year, but that might be what we will be looking at to get that untethered. And that would be definitely something that I would change this straight away. If that came out next year, absolutely I would change that. If nothing else changed, if they kept the resolution, everything else the same, and they came out with a battery pack to detether this, I think I would. I think I would sell up and pay some extra money to go for that as a pack, as long as the battery pack lasted for, say, at least 4 hours, and you can swap out the battery, things like that, make it a bit easier. Or if the cable could be made just slightly lighter. This does, when you're putting it on and you've got the back of your chair, it does kind of get tangled around the back of your head and kind of stick in a little bit. So the way that this cable management is not that great. I've heard that the Oculus is better. The way the cable management is better than on the Vive. I don't know. But, it is what it is. But if you could make this, say, just a single cable, USB 3.1, although a lot of people don't have 3.1 at the moment. I don't have 3.1. You could possibly get the bandwidth down that, and the power as well. Everything that you're going to want down one single little cable. Whether that's an issue because of the weight of that, maybe the thickness and the weight of this cable actually helps, because you do feel it when you're walking around and you kind of consciously know it's there all the time, and it's kind of tickling you on your back and sort of touching the backs of your legs, and you go, oh, there's a cable, and I just step over that there as I walk down here. Something a bit lighter, you're going to really yank it and just pull this thing off. I've had a few occasions where I've been crouching down doing something, and then I've moved a little bit, stood on the cable and gone to stand up and almost ripped this thing clean off my head. So getting rid of that cable would be definitely something that I would like to see. Don't think it will happen next year. Could be wrong. That may be a 2018 thing, but I'm sure that's going to come, because people want the room space. I'm sure of that. When everybody tries room space, they love it. If you haven't got a big enough room, that is bumming. You will want to try and to do that. But then again, if you could detether a bit more, you have a PC. Quite often it's in a small room, a box room, bedroom, or such like, but then you've got your lounge. And if you could Maybe have a long cable to a box and then untether and go to that box. I don't know. That would then open up the possibilities of room space to go and pick a bigger room. You could be playing this, maybe your kitchen is huge, but your living room is tiny. So you end up going playing in the kitchen. So the de-tether thing, I think, is a real major thing for room scale. I mean, God, if you could go and play this out in the back garden, well, people tend to have a much bigger garden than they do a front room, so that would be pretty damn cool to be able to do that kind of thing. But that all comes down to range, and then that's kind of happen anytime soon. Have you got any ideas on how to get rid of the cable? What would you like to see? Is it a real deal breaker? What you think on my thoughts on that? So my next point, different price points. Would you be happy with different price points of the same manufacturer? Say HTC or Oculus came out and they had 2 or 3 variants, a basic, mid-range, high-range model that has higher or lower resolution and different sensors. That's going to kind of muddy things with the developers as well. That's not going to help them too much, because you're going to develop games and you've got all these different head-mounted displays and different variations going on. So I can kind of see why it's a good thing to not have too many different types. I wouldn't like to see things being stifled by there being too many variants, but personally I would be quite happy to pay a little bit more money for some of the features that I've talked about being implemented on that may have been knocked out just because of a price point. And some more devices at different price points. What do you think? Would you be happy paying more? Would you be happy to have a low resolution, such like, or something that's not quite as good as what's out there now because you can't quite afford it, but you'd like something that is better than a mobile phone, better than a Google Cardboard, you can strap to your PC, but not quite as good as what we have. What are your thoughts on that? Going back to sensors, having more sensors would be great. As you can see, I've put on a Leap Motion on the front here, and I've used this in a few applications. There's not many applications that utilize this yet, but it is really good fun. Going back to what I was talking about with the alt space, talking to other people, and in there they've implemented that I can wave to people, I can give somebody a thumbs up, I can do other gestures as well, but I shouldn't and don't. But that is a real level of immersion, and that is quite trippy that you can actually see your hands, and they can model them to be any hand. You know, you could have a huge orc hand or something. You know, in VR you can hold huge hammers, and it kind of is really weird to see things of a different scale or size. Maybe if they could do it in your hand to be tiny or something. I don't know. There'd be all sorts of freaky cool things. Anyway, getting back to the point, the sensor, that is fantastic. I can certainly see something like this being implemented if in not HTC or Oculus, some other manufacturer, maybe Leap Motion, who's going to come up with their own, I don't know who they're talking to, but implementing this into a head-mounted display or into some external sensors to track you as you're moving around, to then pose your body into things. That if that's not coming out next year, I'm sure the year after something similar to this is going to happen. I know when I've been in alt space, there's been lots of people asking me, how do you get that, and how much does that cost, and where can I get one of those? And that's like really cool. So a lot of people are interested when they figure out you can suddenly you can use your hands as a controller. It's really good. The downside of this is, other than having to put in an extra cable and run an extra cable down, is that this has a wide field of view here on the front. As soon as you move your hands out to the side, your hands disappear, which they would in normal reality. You can't see your hands around the back of your head. You can slightly to the side, but what happens is that you bring your hand back into where the sensor is, but it takes a few seconds for it to see your hand and register and figure out where it is. There's a little bit of latency in that, and whether they can put a few more of these sensors, maybe sort of a couple angled on the side, so it's tracking more of your body, maybe your legs, so you can see your legs moving. You know, as you walk around the room, you can see your legs moving. Who knows? And the CEO or one of the main guys from Leap Motion, when they were doing one of their keynote talks, was talking about one of these sensors being switched back the other way, so it can track your lips talking to people, and you can see facial expressions. So I can give a thumbs up, I can also smile at somebody, and your avatar would do the same. And then you can have more emotion, you know, sort of more emotions in games. So the way that you can imagine like a game where you're talking to somebody else, and how you're looking at them in VR affects the game. So if you're kind of, you know, scowling at them or smiling at them, changes the way that the game works. I mean, that's kind of some futuristic, freaky stuff. But that's something that's I can see is going to happen. Not next year, but yeah. So more sensors. Have you seen any different types of sensors out there that may have been implemented? For whatever reason, I've seen hand gloves or whatever, but I think if they can do away with the gloves and just have your hands tracking like this, that would be far better. Because you don't have to have a controller in your hand. You can have a mix of how using your one hand, and a controller. So yeah, that'll be a great thing, and I'm sure something like this is going to be implemented, if not next year, the year afterwards. I could be completely wrong, but there we go. Right, okay, talking about sensors and controllers, and I just picked this up. This controller, fantastic. That is just knocked Oculus on its ass completely and utterly, because to have these and you walk around in Alt Space and other games, and you can operate and pick things up and move stuff. One of those, or bear with me, because I don't use this now and again unless I've revived. Shouldn't have said that. Oh dear. Revived an Oculus game, and then you get one of these. And this is, I'm not going to throw it because it's the only one I've got. I don't want to break it. That is dead. Who wants to use one of those, really? I don't. When you got something like this, that knocks that out completely on its ass. You can play arcadey sort of games where that might be okay. Yeah, it's probably always going to have a place for that. But when you stood up and moving around, you don't want two hands on a controller. This is fantastic. I don't think that there can be a great deal improved on this. I don't know, I could be wrong. What are your thoughts on that? You may have some fantastic ideas. I hope people have. Valve have been developing this for a few years, so I'm sure this is pretty cock on at the moment. A few extra buttons might not go amiss. I was feeling that you could have an extra couple of buttons here, maybe a couple of buttons on the fingers there, maybe, because you've got these where you can kind of squeeze it. I don't know, yeah. But all in all, that is an awesome couple of controllers that you get, and that is worth the extra money. That's where the money's going, on these and the extra camera and the lighthouse tracking, because you get two of them. So those that are banging on that HTC is too expensive, completely wrong, because all the hardware is there. Unless Oculus come out with their touch controllers and another light sensor or something that may equal up, and it comes out at a lesser price point. But these things are going to come down in price, aren't they? So this controller, pretty good. Maybe a few extra buttons on it. Any ideas that you may have for a different shape, a different style, or I don't know. I don't know how they can improve this. Maybe make this ring possibly a little bit smaller. Sometimes I've had it where the model doesn't quite match up like for like with this, and you end up kind of hitting this bit, or you're doing something where these. So maybe that could be made a little bit smaller, and they can put some extra sensors down here. So because when you're the lighthouses pick up on these sensors all around, maybe they put a few more on down here. Even if you're obscuring some with your hands, it's going to track those. But these are great. It wouldn't bother me if the next generation had exactly the same, unless you don't think they're any good. You know, as I keep saying, put it down in the comments. What else? What else can I think about? Another lighthouse, or another couple of lighthouses for the Vive only. This is, I keep going back to the Vive because this is all I have. I have a situation where I've got two controllers. One's obscured from where I'm sat here at the moment, but I can still track just from one controller there, although when I'm sat here in my seat, if I just move around slightly, I do lose tracking. It would be great if I can add an extra one in this room, because I do put my room space slightly into this room as well. So, and I can see that on the floor. So I gained an extra little bit of room space by going into another room. And therein lies another idea that you could potentially, if you're kind of struggling with one small room, but you've got two small rooms that are, you've got a wide doorway or something, or it's like kind of an open plan sort of area, but you can't get that line of sight, adding on extra lighthouses. I would like to see that feature. I've seen that HTC have given some prices out to add on to sell these accessories, but they're not supported at the moment, as far as I'm aware, to have 3 lighthouses. You can turn one on and off, so you can always have just 2, which I possibly will do when those are released, and put an extra one in here. But those lighthouses, yeah, whether they implement some extra sensors like these into those lighthouses would maybe an idea, but then you've got to transfer data back. So that's another thought I had. What else have we got? I think I'm pretty much done. The only other thought, and this kind of ties into what's been happening with Microsoft and their AR, these HoloLens things, which when I first saw them I thought, oh god, that kind of looks a bit crap, it looks a bit gimmicky, and Microsoft are dropping the ball again, as they quite often do. They're too late to the stage. But I kind of think they're onto something in a way. But I think they need to go kind of VR and AR. In a recent video I saw, they were doing some AR stuff with their HoloLens, and then lo and behold, HTC Vive popped up in one of their ads. So they're not adverse to sort of mixing it up. I think Windows is going to start supporting VR, which is pretty exciting stuff. And they're coming up with all sorts of devices. But on the Vive particularly, I would like to see this camera being used a lot more. It's good as a chaperone. I've hardly used it that much. It's a bit low res, a higher resolution camera, and twin cameras. So when you put this thing on, the cameras are on, and it looks like you're just, looking through a pair of glasses, and then you can kind of switch it into VR mode, and it kind of, the cinema lights coming down, and you've just disappeared into a VR. Slightly more, less unnerving experience. Not that it bothers me putting something on the eyes, but it's, those are maybe a bit more claustrophobic, like putting a balaclava on your head. You put these on, it's more like a pair of glasses, and then it sort of like goes into VR. Or then you mix it and go into AR. So I could see that the cameras, the next one may have a better camera, hopefully twin cameras that are maybe more centrally located to your pupils, to make that that experience a bit nicer. And also mixing the augmented reality with virtual reality. So with a joystick, you can see your joystick in virtual reality because it's tracking it with a sensor, and I don't know, maybe if it's a certain color or it knows the shape of it, you can then see it in virtual reality. So the cockpit that you're in, you can see the actual joystick, maybe just the shape of the joystick, I don't know, and then you can change it to VR. So as like you can see this in VR, you've then suddenly got joysticks. I don't know, maybe they're going to start bringing out joysticks or wheels that are going to be VR that'll have these sensors on. Yeah, there's a thought. Would you be happy to buy joysticks and yokes and wheels and I don't know, whatever else you can think of? I don't know what else I can think of really that are going to have these sensors on. That because the more things that you can tactilely touch in the real world, but also then it's the same scale and size, and be able to do stuff in VR, that just immerses so much more. There we go. So if you would like to leave comments as I keep going on in this video down below, I would love to see what you have to say about what we may see next year, or what you would like to see next year. And if you've seen any exciting news out there of new products that are coming out in the next 6 to 12 months that we can all sort of discuss and maybe have a follow-up video about this. So there we go. This is my video about the second generation or 2017 head-mounted displays. If you like this video, hit the like button. My name is RJ, this is the Tech Cave, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.